Hi, welcome back to the I Don't Like Murder podcast. I'm Jenny, joined with my co host, Rita. Hi,
Hey,
Rita.
hey, Jenny.
Hi. So, today we're going to be talking about a murder hiding in plain sight. This is an ongoing case that's been extremely popular because where I am, because it's very close. It's about the murder of a couple of teenage girls and from 2017, and they just in November finally made an arrest in the case. So it's about the Delphi murders of Abby Williams and Libby German. They uh, they had a day off school to make up. It was like a makeup snow day, which you probably don't know anything about, but um, so February 13th, there hadn't been enough snow days that are built in, so they got the day off school, and they went to this place that it's like a nature trail to walk on, and there's this huge bridge called the Monon High Bridge, and I would never in my life step on this bridge. It's like an old railroad track, and like you just walk along the tracks, and it's like I don't know how tall, but like it might as well be a million miles tall. I'm not
Right.
super scary. I don't like heights. But they were out walking along there, and then when one of their dads came to pick him up, he couldn't find the girls. And so he looked around, thinking they just lost track of time or whatever. It was a really nice day out. So couldn't find him, looked for a while, and then, after an hour or two of looking for the girls, he called and made a report. So um every like they kind of like gathered a bunch of people that night and looked for the girls, couldn't find them. And then the next day they had a major search party, and they ended up finding the girls' bodies like pretty close to the bridge.
Mm.
Um so part of what I'm going to be talking about is my memory of this, because I remember like hearing all these things. Um, but I do have the dates of stuff. So February 15th, so the day after the girls' bodies were found, the police released a really short video that Libby had taken on her phone, which what a badass for taking a video. She does have audio too that was released a little bit later. So they released a short clip of the guy, how he's dressed, like how he looks, and they're like, do you know anybody that looks like this, walks like this, has, this jacket? And I will say he does look very like normal middle-aged Midwestern man, like
Right. Right.
very much. But also the town that they're in is super small. It's less than 3,000 people. So at the same time, like you might know somebody that fits this description. So that was released, and then I I think a couple years later they released a little bit more because they were trying to, they still hadn't made an arrest. Um,
So
but
two
yeah, so
years, no arrests. So for 2 years
right,
after they found them, wow. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so 2017 they released small clips of all that, and then July of that year they released this. They've done two sketches through the whole case, but they released the first sketch July of 2017,
Mhm.
and so if I remember right, that's when they released a little bit more video and audio of it, just to kind of, help put it together. And they did say this is the prime suspect. So if you know this person, they stress that. The thing that really gets me, like after the arrest, which not convicted yet, but in locked up right now, awaiting trial.
Okay.
So it's this person may have inserted them, like the profile that they gave is it's somebody who's either from the area, works in the area, or like like travels often to the area. They may look younger than they may look younger than they actually are.
Mhm.
Um, it's probably somebody you wouldn't suspect. Like it's like all these things that like really fit exactly the person they arrested. So looking back at it, it's kind of like, did they know who it was? And they just didn't have anything to tie the murders to the person or not.
Right.
But so then 2 years later, in 2019, this was more than 2 years after the murders, they released a new sketch. It was a little unclear from what I remember at the time if it was a different person or if this was supposed to be the same person, but it was a much younger looking person. And so it turns out that that was supposed to be a different person that was either a witness or a contributor or some part of the crime or knew about it, and they were looking for that person to question.
Okay.
As far as I know, the second person, we don't know who that is. And then throughout the years, there have been a couple of suspects that was heavily looked into that ended up not being the person, not being any of these people or related to the case. Um, they're creepy. One of them is on trial or convicted. I think he was already convicted of some misbehaviors with children. Um, so definitely good, and it was in the area, so good people to look at. But they just weren't with this case. So then everything went quiet for a while. Of course, like on the anniversaries and stuff, they would always, you know, play everything and like, hey, if you know anything, please come out.
Right.
And looking, the video was grainy and the audio was grainy, but I feel like if you're close to the person, you would probably know. Like, I don't want to say that anybody knew because I don't know. Or maybe, it might be a situation where you convince yourself your husband is not a murderer, like this can't be him, even if it looks like him, sounds like him, this is how he walks, whatever. You don't want to think that.
Right.
So it might be that type of a situation, or like his coworkers. And there's always that, like, well, if this person murdered someone else and I say something, what's going to stop them from murdering me if they find out? Of course, that's always a thought, at least in my head, about turning someone in.
And if I could
Um,
just interject, because I think, like we've talked about before, our first inclination is there's no way they could do it. So it stops right there,
yeah,
right?
of course.
You wouldn't, it's like you wouldn't suspect your spouse, partner, son, daughter, or you wouldn't suspect it. But if you saw a picture that goes, that looks a little like them,
Yeah,
you may just go like, oh, it's a coincidence. They have the same
yeah,
body shape and facial features that you do. And other, and so if it kind of stops there, then someone's really going to have to show you, or ask you, where were they on the night of the 5th,
right.
where at, or do they frequent this town, or are they a truck
Yeah,
driver or something, right? Somebody who,
right,
did they grow up here and they moved to the town over, all those different things. You wouldn't be a detective with somebody that you've already stopped it with, right? So that
right.
can make it really tough. And
Exactly.
the other thing too is that I always think of it, for me, maybe this happens to a lot of people, but I can meet someone for the first time, they're like, you look really familiar, do I know you from somewhere? And maybe I've just got the regular brown haired older woman look, but and I'll say, oh no, oh, or you, but it's like, I would think, well, wait, that could happen. Someone who looks like me,
Hmm.
right, could commit a crime,
Yeah,
and then people go like, well, it looks just like Rita. But but
yeah,
I would most likely say, because a lot of the cases we talk about have a lot to do with people saying there's absolutely no way, and why would I become a mini detective wondering? Because if the person said, Well, honey, that's my route. That's where I always go. He was working. I would believe that, right? You would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this is kind of the thing. So let me October of last year, they finally made an arrest of Richard Allen. And he's awaiting trial now, locked up. But he was at the trail that day. He owns the clothes of the man in the video. He talked to police as a witness, said he was there, said he did not see the girls. He was there at the time. Like
Oh boy.
I don't want to say inserted himself into the investigation. He was like, you know, he did what you would think any normal person would do. I was there, I didn't see anything, like, you know, these things, let me know if I can be of any more help, all those things. So put himself there, said, yeah, I was wearing similar clothes, da 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 da. So, like, it's kind of strange. Also, there was a witness at the time, and they spoke to the police at the time. I forgot, I skipped over that earlier,
Mm-hmm.
who saw a man that was wearing muddy, bloody clothes walking back to their car or alongside the road. That I'm gonna say was him. Um, but however it is, they didn't, I mean, it's hard because there's few cameras, it's rural, so there's only so much you can catch. Um, so on the probable cause affidavit for the arrest, one of the things that tied him to the crime scene, which I highly suspect and hope that there's more than this, because this probably wouldn't get a conviction. But I'm assuming that there's more than this, because the we'll talk about the crime scene in a minute, but there was a 40 caliber unspent round found near one of the girls' bodies, and it matches a gun that he owns. And he did say that he had a gun with him at the trail that day. So, yeah, like, you are kind of digging your own grave, guy. Um, and then when they went to do a search of his house, they found the jacket. He still had the jacket, like years later, still had that same jacket that he was wearing. I mean, I don't know. That to me is, I don't want to blame his wife, but at the same time, for a moment, your husband goes out and murders two girls, comes home in muddy, bloody clothes, washes those clothes, continues to wear those clothes. Was she not home? Did she not know?
Hmm.
So I don't know. Um, so I know there's been things leaked about the crime scene. Um, so I don't want to go into that because I don't know how much is true and how much is not. But
Right, right.
in the affidavit, the girls' clothes were in the water away from their bodies, so they had been stripped down.
Mm.
So that's all. That's as far as they said anything about that. So we don't know whatever happened. But um, all the interviews I've seen with police officers have talked about how horrific the crime scene was. Like, it's something like they've never seen before.
Mm.
So it's like you can only use your imagination, and it's disgusting to think of these 13 and 14-year-old little girls going through whatever happened to them. So that also leads me to believe that this isn't his first kill.
Mm.
Like, like, I just feel like the first off, you have two girls in the woods on a trail that other people are on, and you go murder them in like a half an hour or hour, whatever it was. I can't remember the timing. Like a quarter of a mile away from where all these other people are. how did you do that? And they haven't released the method which the girls were killed. So, we don't know if he shot them. Like, wouldn't somebody hear the shots? But then also, you're out in the middle of nowhere. So if you hear shots, sometimes it's just somebody shooting a gun. So it's not necessarily like, I live in the city now. People aren't just target practicing in the city. If somebody's shooting, probably something is probably going on. But out in the middle of nowhere, it's not. You hear gunshots.
Right, or it's hearing something that would not normally be there. Your brain probably doesn't say, was that a gunshot?
Yeah.
Probably your brain goes, are there kids out with firecrackers? Right?
Uh,
Is that right? Maybe. I
well,
don't know.
I mean, yeah, well,
Or
it
depends on what
depends.
kind of gun he has. I don't know. I mean, because
Yeah.
it's pretty brazen and bold. It's pretty brazen and bold, right?
Yeah.
Daylight and with
Yeah.
people. So did he have some sort of mechanism that, or to feel that way, that he could just do it and shoot a gun without people coming?
Yeah. And there is talk of there potentially being a second person, because how do you
Ugh,
control two 13 and a 14-year-old girls who are going to fight? I mean, one of them wanted to be a police officer.
mm, mm.
They, they were smart enough and aware enough that they took video and audio of this guy. Like, these girls are going to fight. They're not going to just let someone kill them. They're going to fight. How do you restrain two, you know,
Unless,
adult
yeah,
sized humans?
right. Unless they knew him. Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility, but as far as I know, they didn't.
Okay. Because
Um,
whatever that video is, because I haven't seen the video, whatever the video
yeah.
is, are they just taking pictures saying this weird guy's walking by or he's bothering us?
They didn't really say anything. It's a picture of him walking towards them,
Oh,
and then
geez.
the audio is guys down the hill.
Mm, and that's it.
So, and very, very recently, after they made the arrest, one of them said gun. So
Oh,
I'm guessing they saw a gun and were like, "Oh shit, we better do what this
run.
guy says because
Oh,
he's
oh,
going to shoot us."
geez,
Um,
Louise.
so that is like kind of crazy, but that my gut is telling me that this guy is probably a serial killer,
Mm.
and these probably aren't the only two.
Yeah.
For
And
for
when you
many
mentioned that,
reasons.
right? But when you mentioned that about the wife, is that there was the guy's name? His name was Gary. I can't remember the last name, but it was in Seattle. And they call it the Green River Killer years
Hmm.
ago.
Yeah.
And he was married for years,
Hmm.
had the family, and the wife didn't. And he would just, follow along the freeway, would go and try and pick up sex workers who that may take a while to go and look for the person who just disappeared.
Yeah.
And so, but then it's like it was such a shocking story, of course, but it went on for years. They couldn't find him, and he was just living regular husband, wife, family, USA.
Yeah, and this is the same with Richard Allen. Like,
Hmm.
he worked at the CVS in their small town
Hmm.
as a pharmacy tech. I've heard interviews with his coworkers, and it seems to me um, like he was one of those people who didn't stand out. Like, he wasn't 100% part of the crowd, but like he was like a cool enough person, like, to get in.
Right.
Like, you went and you did an interview and you told the cops you were there, and hey, I'm here. So you don't really stand out because you didn't insert yourself too much into the investigation, where somebody's like, hey, this guy is way too invested in this,
Right.
but invested enough as a normal caring human being would be.
Sure.
And then, he's got two kids of his own. He's 50, so they're probably grown and not living with him, or,
Hmm.
old enough that,
Right.
they're not little kids. um, but I think, and then there was the Daily Beast did an article interviewing one of the bar owners of a bar that him and his wife used to hang out with or hang out at.
Mhm.
And they, the guy's like, hey, we were friends. We occasionally did stuff outside of here, but they're regulars at my bar. And like, I would have never, that this guy never crossed my mind that it could be him. So I
Wow.
think that he just was living like right on that line of like just perfectly for years of show, not showing any signs, not being a little bit off one way or another to where somebody's suspecting, like, oh, well, this guy, like this guy's a little suspicious or this guy's a little creepy or whatever. Like nobody saw or thought that, which to me is terrifying.
Yeah, well, look at the BTK killer, right? All those years in
Yeah.
Oklahoma. And people
Yeah.
said he was a jerk for his job and he's kind of, arrogant, but did not, until he unfolded and he decided he wanted to tell everybody all the grisly details of how
Yeah.
horrific it was, right?
Yeah.
Is that, but it, yeah, that, and that's part of, what's interesting and why we always say we don't like murder. But it is interesting to say these people are living among us, and
Yeah.
then and then just going with the thing of going, okay, all of us can attest that we have some friends maybe who are a little kind of off the grid socially,
Yeah.
that that are but it wouldn't hurt a fly, right? Just wouldn't
Right.
hurt a fly. That
Yeah.
somebody could say the stereotype of the serial killer behind the scenes is somebody
Hmm.
who kind of lives by the beat of their own drum, and
Yeah.
or and so what's unnerving, of course, is when it's kind of regular person, just like
Yeah.
you said, being just kind of in the fibers of society. It's like, I can keep a job, I can raise a family, I can do this, but I also have this thing in my head. Because again, maybe we keep asking questions because just it's hard to understand the compulsion for someone to sit there and think about how to do it and then get away with it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So when I was looking up stuff about this, like
Mhm.
my thought was like, how many like how many murderers are like lurking around? So just pure stats, there's estimated to be 25 to 50 active serial killers in the US at any given time.
Wow.
And on average, everyone will walk past 36 murderers in their life.
Wow.
So yeah, like 36 is kind of a high number.
Right.
I feel like that's escalating now, but maybe because I live in that kind of a war zone right now, it seems like.
Right. And I
Um,
think too, because if it's right, what is constituted murder, so that also includes like domestic, it's like it's I'm sure that's what it includes. That, you
I mean,
know,
it didn't
yeah, it
give
didn't say,
any.
because I'm sure,
Yeah, it
because
didn't
of all,
say.
I don't know all the statistics, but it's not just, we're not going to walk by 36 serial killers.
Right.
That would scare the
Um,
crap out of me.
I
Because
have
the
heard of the
crimes of
fact that
passion, the road
yeah,
rages, all
yeah,
those things that you just like, yeah, the ridiculous murder stuff, that's probably all included, right?
oh,
Yeah,
I'm sure it
yeah,
is. I
okay,
heard a statistic years ago that you will, by come into contact with, walk past, interact with at a store or whatever,
right.
a serial killer once every 10 years.
Hmm.
So that's, so 36. So let's say that you're basically walking like 70, roughly 70 people in your
Wow,
life, serial killers,
wow.
or I mean, that's wrong. Never mind. Ignore me.
No, it's okay. But it's enough. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, and then isn't it wild kind of as a society where we want to know, and then because we're always looking backwards, right? Because they don't say, hey, I'm gonna about to kill somebody.
Right.
We and then just so interested in that psychology of someone, And is
Yeah.
it the way they're wired? Is it the environment they grew up in? And then that, like you said, that thin line of being able to sustain in society where no one would suspect you,
Yeah.
and at the same time, and then one of the cruelest, to take two children,
Yeah.
and right, and then what does
Yeah.
that feed within someone? And
And
that's
I
where
can,
the wires go a little go a lot haywire.
oh yeah, crazy. And I mean, to me, you really should watch that video at some point. But
Okay.
to me, I feel like specifically being in a really small town, his coworkers, people that know him have probably looked at it and thought, God, that really looks like Rick. But
Right.
then at the same time, thinking, no, he would never do that. He can't be responsible for this. But I mean, I'm sure some of them in the back of their head are like, oh God, it really was him. But I guarantee that there was a handful of people that thought, gosh, that looks just like him. He walks like that. But no, there's no way. Because you have to, like, I mean, you kind of protect yourself. Oh, as of, no, that kind of person can't be in my life. Like, I wouldn't have somebody in my life like that. That's not possible. And I feel like, that's self preservation in a way.
Right. Just like probably almost all of the cases. And what's amazing is just that whole thought process of nobody saw it coming.
Yeah.
And then I think that's one of the scariest parts of all. Those
Yeah.
people, like that was the first case that I brought for our channel, was he was perfect guy USA,
Yeah.
is deacon in a church. And
Hmm.
then to viciously bludgeon his wife.
Yeah.
Um,
Plan.
right, planned it, yeah, and yeah, exactly, with his friend,
Yeah.
and so, and just the arrogance of saying yes because she wanted me to lead a too perfect a life, just something outrageous. But how do you, right? So it's just living in the shadows of someone who absolutely, uh, that was one of the cases, because everyone was just as a kid so shocked and appalled because it's so out of the norm. How does
Yeah.
somebody who's held in society such highest self-esteem, or
Yeah.
high esteem, his self-esteem was great, um, that wakes up one day and within a 21-day period from planning it to execution decides this is the way to change my life, and then try and get
Right.
away with it, right? And everyone, and that was the shocking part, is that who would think that the church deacon, who was everyone would go to and be counseled by, who was known for helping the community and helping
Yeah.
children, and his wife was amazing, all those things, and that just to wake up one day to say my only solution is this, and that's for all the cases. And just like I said, we're asking questions that can't be answered. But it's just wild when people go, either like the guy who just decides I'm going to go hunting for someone or
Yeah.
two girls to kill, or someone just says I want to make a change in my life, and whether it's a spouse, a partner, family member, is now I have to plan on for insurance, for child custody, to get rid
Yeah.
of a problem. Now they need to be killed. And
Right.
yeah, it's the unanswered question, because we can't kind of get into the head of someone like that. But
Yeah.
it's, yeah, but yeah,
Yeah. But it's interesting to try. But yeah. And
yeah,
the thing is, like, it's February in Indiana. So, I mean, granted, it was like a 50 some degree day. So it was extremely warm for that time.
right.
But would you just, I mean, I wouldn't think to myself, and trust me, there have been many of warm February days that I've went out to trails just like this.
Right.
And, you know, just thinking like why would you think, oh, somebody, either one, I have to watch for somebody to murder me, which now I do. And on the other end, why would that be your hunting grounds? Did you snap? And like all of a sudden you see these girls and like, well, I want to kill them right now. I don't know, because it just seems to me like that's a weird time and place combination for you to commit
Right.
murder.
But I guess I get if we go to a detective mode, it would be a time of year for less people to walk on a trail
Yes.
than the
Yeah.
summer and spring.
Mm.
And it was, even though it's 50, it was an unusually warm, so it could draw some people out, but not thousands of people out. And so the
Um,
likelihood of maybe having that moment in time, right, to say, for those people, for the killers who say, I just want to kill something,
mhm.
and it becomes an opportunity to say,
Yeah.
because if those girls had decided to, go to the movies and they weren't there, opportunity
Mhm.
missed. So
Right.
that's even creepier. How many times were you walking up and down looking for that moment in
Yeah.
time, right? And
Yeah,
that's, yeah,
exactly.
right. And that's the frightening part, is
Exactly.
had they gone somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
almost,
that's
it's like all these things converging at once. It's quiet,
yeah.
but it's not snowing, it's not icy. People can still be out
Yeah.
here, and I'm just gonna go walk around with my gun, seeing what I can do. Pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
And there's no indication that they were in contact before that day.
Mm,
So, which that may come out in trial. I don't know, because it could be, because I know one of the girls was talking to a fake dating profile of some guy, which is how one of the other suspects, they thought that he may be involved at one point.
mm,
So, she could have been, talking to someone else. But as far as I know, and as far as has been reported, there was no connection there. That it was an opportunity that he saw at the time, and this is what he chose to do with that opportunity. So, kind of to wrap up, I'll give the latest news on this situation. Um, so, back at the end of last year, the attorneys had filed for a change of venue because, I mean, it's a very small town, and like everyone's connected to one side or the other, or pretty much everyone's connected to one
mhm.
side or the other. They were granted that, which I think is, for a fair trial, that's super fair. And I'm all about fair trial. I'm all about guilty or innocent until proven guilty, no matter what. So like
Right.
all of this about him, like if it turns out he really didn't do it, then he's innocent, and I feel like we should treat him as such.
Right.
However, for our show, we have to kind of assume, for the sake of the show, that he is guilty to talk about it.
Or there's probable cause to have him in jail right now, right? There's enough
Exactly.
to hold him there to think that,
Yeah.
yep.
And I don't know I'm not sure when the trial got bumped to, but it was supposed to be last month, and then it got bumped, I think, to June. And I don't know if it's been bumped again, but I suspect it will be. And then he did, probably 2 weeks ago, requested to move to a different facility because he claimed he was being treated really bad. And he, like, the pictures of him, he looks terrible. Like, I don't know, I mean, I'm assuming nobody, you know, uh, does well being locked up. I mean, there are a handful of people, but in general,
Mm,
especially people who probably suspected a murder that I committed 5 years ago, I'm never going to get caught for.
mm.
And potentially other murders that you have potentially committed, you didn't get um, you didn't get convicted of. But they are
Yep.
moving him to a different facility, because he's, and I think he was just in like the county jail
Mm,
that is in the small town. So, you allegedly murdered two teenage girls
mhm.
and possibly molested them. So yeah, you're not going to have a good time probably wherever you go.
Yeah, but I
But
think county jails
specifically, like,
are,
right
yeah,
there with people that know the girls or their families, or,
right. Plus, I
it
think
it probably
yeah,
isn't fair.
But I think county jails are transitory, so they're really not meant for people to stay for years. So those who are
Yeah.
in there for years, it's not great. I mean, that's and I've seen interviews with prisoners saying, "Get me to prison because at least
Yeah.
it's not a heck hole," as they stay in
Yeah. And
prison.
I
I'm
mean,
sure
he's
everyone
been in
says
there
heck in prison.
for 4 months.
Yeah.
So, because he was arrested, or maybe 5, he was arrested in October. So, yeah, I mean, typically in that situation, somebody would be held until trial
Yep.
in county, which, yeah, I mean, yeah, please, if I have to go, I'm going to go to prison. I don't want to go to county.
Yeah, but there is, and in just thinking about it, I just saw a picture on social media. Remember the police officer who grabbed her gun instead of her taser
Yeah.
a few years ago? And
Mhm.
I don't remember the timeline, but she was just released from prison. And maybe she's in for maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I just have no sense of
Yeah.
time. I didn't look at it. But what I saw was the picture of her mugshot when she went in, and now a year and a half later, looks like a completely different person.
Oh yeah,
And
he looks. Yeah, he looks like he's ill.
and
Like,
she looks drawn. Her eyes are
yes,
sunk in.
yep,
She's lost a ton of weight. And the
yep,
thing though is that people can talk about there's no way anyone can know what it's like to lose your freedom. And then I would imagine the older you are, the harder it is to say,
yeah,
right? So you're 50
yeah,
and you're used to saying, I can do whatever I want, go wherever I want. And
yeah,
now you're sitting in a 6x4 cell and you
yeah,
go, right? And then your whole life is the same thing every single day. So
yeah. And yeah, like this is kind of where I get so torn about these things of, if you're guilty, I don't care.
yeah. Mhm.
If you're innocent, you shouldn't be in there in the first place. Like
Right.
that's the whole like pull with me is,
Right. You got to make
if
sure you're guilty, right?
yeah, and I mean 100%, if our justice system was what it should be, I would be totally fine with much harsher punishments on things. But the way that it is, I hesitate because so many people, I mean, you hear all the time about people getting exonerated after 20, 30, 40 years of being locked up for things they didn't do. But it was a forced confession, or like somebody said you did it, and like there's no evidence, and juries are, we've talked about juries before, about how like we as a jury are uneducated about a lot of things. And of course, who's gonna, the defense is gonna be the one educating you about that. Well, of course, in your head it's gonna be, well, they're just trying to say this isn't true so their client doesn't get locked up.
Right. Well, and just like we're talking about your case, sounds like there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, right? Which is real evidence. And there's,
Yeah,
the bullet,
yeah,
the film, trying to match up. And I am sure that the case is going to be circumstantial, because if his DNA was all over everything, but then of course, if they're in the water, there's no DNA. So like there's still a lot not known.
there
Right.
the bodies were not in the water.
Oh,
And
okay.
there is a, totally my opinion, there's a very good chance that there's DNA there.
Okay.
One, he has no criminal record. He's got like
Yeah.
a couple of traffic tickets is it. So his DNA was not in the system, so there was no way to match it.
Right. Or his
They
picture to
did
match.
do a
Yeah.
DNA test, I believe, when they arrested him, or when they were searching his house before they arrested him. I don't know for sure. But so I feel like there's a very good chance that there's DNA and they're holding that for trial.
That's possible.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. And the girls' bodies were on land, not in water.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
So
it
they
was
know
only
they know more than we do in terms of cause of
yeah,
death, and so
yeah. And so and if it's as gruesome as we're being led to believe.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine that any killer's DNA would not be there.
Okay.
Specifically, if you are walking down the
Right.
road
And you're not
covered
in a
in
hazmat, right?
blood,
Right, exactly.
like
Wow.
that. Yeah, crazy.
So wow, interesting. And we'll be listening and waiting for the update. See, maybe we
Yeah,
can
for
catch it
sure.
if it actually goes to trial, or if there's a plea deal in there somewhere.
Yeah,
What a
yeah,
case. Well, great job,
exactly.
Jenny. Great job. Really
Thanks,
interesting.
Rita. It was good to see you again.
Same.
Yeah.
All right. This is another great show for I Don't Like Murder. Jenny, I'll have I'm up next to tape, so you'll see that in the future. But we're looking forward to having you enjoy all of our shows previous to this one and then ongoing. Thanks, you guys. Again,
Please
Jenny,
like,
thank
share,
you.
and subscribe.
Yay. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.